Everything seems flawless until a single message shatters the illusion. What if trust wasn't a gift but bait? What if love was just a convenient facade for a meticulously crafted trap? And what if the man they thought was vulnerable turned out to be the most dangerous of them all? When betrayal is exposed, the game changes, and the stakes become far higher than a broken heart. They thought they knew who they were playing with. They were wrong. Greetings, my dear friend. I am very happy that you are watching my video, and I will be even happier if you subscribe to my channel. This will make me even happier. Let's get started. A soft chime rang out as Lawrence Corbin raised his glass, the crystal catching the glow of the chandelier above. To my son, Gavin, who's taken a humble firm and turned it into one of the city's crown jewels, he proclaimed warmly. His words echoed in the refined ambiance of Gavin Fletcher's dining room, where friends and family were gathered around a grand mahogany table. At the head sat Gavin himself, offering a modest but appreciative nod. Only 34, Gavin had earned his success brick by brick, pouring the same precision into his reputation as he did his architectural designs. Beside him, his fiancée Sabrina Hollis flashed a smile, her engagement ring flickering under the light. And to Sabrina, Lawrence added, turning toward her, his voice softening. In a matter of days, you'll officially be part of our family. After losing Gavin's mother so young, it eases my heart to see him find love again. Glasses rose in unison, and the clinking filled the room. Beneath the table, Gavin squeezed Sabrina's hand affectionately, not noticing the slight tension in her fingers. I remember when he was first starting out, Lawrence continued, his voice thick with nostalgia. He'd scribbled design ideas on napkins, notebooks, whatever he could find. And now, look at what he's accomplished. The Fletcher Architecture Group now boasted over 50 employees. Dad, you're laying it on a bit thick, Gavin said, laughing softly, though his pride showed through. That's only because it's true, Sabrina chimed in with a light tease, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Hard work is part of his brand, after all. Laughter filled the space as staff brought out the first course. Gavin had spared no expense for this intimate pre-wedding gathering, though the ceremony itself promised to be even grander. He donated a sizable portion of last quarter's earnings to the Children's Hospital, Lawrence added, beaming, just like his mother used to do. Sabrina smiled politely, but her fingers tapped restlessly beneath the linen-draped table. That detail didn't escape Art Lindsay. A longtime confidant of Gavin's and a sharp-eyed private investigator, Art sat quietly, taking in every nuance and shift in energy around the table. The evening buzzed with warmth, but he noticed the subtle discord beneath it. Meanwhile, across the city at Bergdorf's, another kind of scene was unfolding. Sabrina stood before a 3-paneled mirror, admiring the wedding gown's silhouette. Her mother, Madeline Mercer, hovered with a critical eye, inspecting every seam and stitch. It's elegant, Madeline mused, but something Parisian would have better suited the occasion. Running her hand over the beadwork, Sabrina responded with icy detachment. Gavin thinks local designers deserve support. Her tone dripped with mockery. At least his wallet appreciates quality, Madeline replied with a knowing smirk. Once the vows are spoken, you'll have full access. You can shape his tastes, or simply override them. A sales associate approached with champagne, but Sabrina dismissed her with a wave. I'm so done pretending. Playing the adoring bride-to-be is exhausting. Just a few more days, Madeline said soothingly. Then everything you've worked for will be yours. Later that evening, tucked into a dimly lit booth at Lou Bernardin, Sabrina leaned into Derek Carrington. With his expensive timepiece and insouciant grin, he was everything Gavin wasn't, and everything she craved. There she is, he murmured, kissing her slow and deep. How was story time with Mr. Perfect? He asked. Sabrina rolled her eyes, dabbing her lipstick with a napkin. Torture? Another long sermon about how far he's come, how hard he's worked. I've heard it 100 times. She mimicked Gavin's reverent tone, then scoffed. And let's not forget the obligatory homage to his saintly mother and her boundless generosity. Derek chuckled, letting his fingers trace lazy circles on her wrist. Keep your focus, babe. That firm alone is worth a fortune, and that's not even counting his personal assets. I know, Sabrina said, briefly resting her head on his shoulder. But he's so observant. He notices everything. It's claustrophobic. That's because he actually cares, Derek said, smirking. Poor guy's completely clueless. Their laughter melted into the restaurant's ambient chatter and clinking silverware. Neither noticed the couple dining 2 tables over, one of whom was quietly relaying details back to Art Lindsay. Flashback, 3 years ago, during the annual fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. Gavin lingered near the bar, deep in discussion with investors about a potential development when he spotted a woman in emerald green enter the ballroom. Her dark waves framed a brilliant smile that seemed both polished and deliberately placed. She moved with ease, drawing attention without effort. "Who is that?" Gavin asked one of the donors beside him. "Sabrina Hollis," the man said. "Her family used to have serious money, but they lost most of it. She's in the art world now, I think. Acquisitions or something like that." Gavin watched her weave through the crowd, engaging seamlessly with donors. When their eyes finally met, she didn't look away immediately. That night, they danced twice and exchanged numbers before leaving. "I've never known anyone like you," Gavin said during their 3rd date, as they wandered the sculpture garden outside Sabrina's museum. "You see value where others see stone and steel," she said with a soft, amused laugh. "I was raised to love beautiful things, Gavin, including the men who create them." Now, in the quiet solitude of his home office, Gavin sat hunched over final wedding details and dinner party notes, unaware that the foundation of his carefully built life was already beginning to crack beneath him. The invitation list had ballooned to over 300 names. The wedding was set in the city's most luxurious hotel, with a honeymoon planned across the Mediterranean's most extravagant coastal retreats. Gavin picked up a photo from his desk, an image of him and Sabrina at a black tie event, her head softly resting on his shoulder. He ran his thumb across her smile, remembering the moment she leaned in that evening and whispered, "I love you. You deserve someone better than me," he murmured to the picture, not knowing how true that sentiment would soon become. Elsewhere in the city, under the warm glow of a table lamp, Sabrina typed quickly on her phone, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Just 3 more days and I can finally be done pretending. He's such a loser. Actually teared up tonight when his dad mentioned his dead mom." Derek's response came seconds later. "Keep it up, babe. We're almost there. No more pretending soon." The message blinked coldly on her screen, a chilling echo of a deception still quietly unfolding. Back at Gavin's office, the atmosphere buzzed with professional urgency. His staff was knee-deep in plans for their newest client, a luxury hotel chain expanding along the waterfront. Gavin rubbed his temples, trying to focus despite the mounting exhaustion of juggling high-stakes deadlines and endless wedding tasks. "Mr. Fletcher?" his assistant called, appearing at the door. "Art Lindsay is here." Art strolled in with a relaxed confidence that clashed with the tense energy of the workspace. "You look like hell," he said with a grin. "Wedding prep wearing you down?" Gavin chuckled weakly. "Try managing a guest list the size of a town while finalizing the design for a 30-story tower." "So, just caffeine and adrenaline at this point?" Art joked, dropping into the chair across from him. "Hey, I meant to ask, what's up with Sabrina's guest list? Some names stood out." "She let her mother handle most of it," Gavin replied with a casual shrug. "Apparently, everyone remotely connected to their social scene got an invite." Art leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Well, a couple of those names?" I've come across them before, and not for good reasons. Gavin's expression dimmed. Art? Come on. Not everyone's squeaky clean. Doesn't mean anything shady is going on. I hear you, Art said, unconvinced. But something just doesn't sit right. Let me look into it. No, Gavin interrupted firmly. I know you mean well, but Sabrina isn't one of your investigations. She's about to be my wife. Art raised his hands in mock surrender, though concern lingered in his gaze. Fine. Just promise me you'll stay alert. You've built too much to have it all come crashing down. Later that night, long after the last employee had left, Gavin remained at his desk, immersed in documents and deadlines. Sabrina had stopped by earlier with lunch, but in her rush to leave, she'd forgotten her phone on the side table. He didn't notice it until the screen lit up with a new message. The sender, Derek, accompanied by a heart emoji. A strange chill swept through him as he reached for the phone. The preview froze him in place. Relax, baby. His family's money is all we need. Once the wedding's over, he's out of the picture. His heart pounded as he unlocked the phone. Sabrina had casually told him the code weeks ago, never imagining he'd have a reason to use it. More texts filled the screen, each one more damning than the last. Derek, you should treat your future board seat at his company like a launch pad. Sabrina, believe me, he's so desperate to be liked he never sees what's right in front of him. Derek, just a little longer. Once the wedding's done, we make our real move. The prenup won't matter when he's out of the way. The walls seemed to close in around him. Every shared moment, their laughter, the whispered promises, the tender glances, now felt like props in a calculated performance. His fists curled tightly, knuckles white with rage. Then, another message arrived. Hey, I left my phone at your office. No peeking at the wedding surprises. He set the phone gently back down, his face unreadable. Then he typed a reply, matching her tone with eerie precision. Found it. Buried in work so I didn't look. Excited for tomorrow's dinner. Love you. He sat in still silence for a long while, his thoughts racing. A part of him, a part he kept buried under diplomacy and design, now stirred to life, sharp-edged and unrelenting. If they thought they could manipulate him, they had no idea who they were dealing with. At that exact hour, in a dim booth of a trendy high-end bar, Sabrina curled against Derek, her fingers lazily tracing patterns on his chest as they talked. Had to endure another soul-sucking dinner with his dad, she muttered. All stories about Gavin's golden boy past and his angelic mother. I wanted to scream. Derek laughed softly, pressing a kiss to her hand. You've got the act down. Gavin only sees what you show him. Sabrina's laugh was bitter, joyless. He started talking about having kids. Me, pregnant with his child? Can you imagine? Stick to what we planned, Derek said calmly. Once the rings are exchanged, we take it slow. We stay clean. No one will ever tie anything back to us. Not even what's going to happen to Gavin. Sabrina's lips curled in a sly grin, amusement flickering in her gaze. Almost feel sorry for the guy, she said, feigning compassion. Then she let out a dry laugh. Almost. Neither she nor her Derek noticed the man seated quietly at the far end of the bar, nursing a drink, one of Art Lindsay's operatives, covertly recording their conversation through a discreet surveillance device embedded in his cufflink. Elsewhere, Gavin Fletcher was alone in the quiet of his study. Documents sprawled across the desk, financial statements, investment records, property deeds. Under the glow of a single lamp, he sifted through the tangled network of his empire. With meticulous care, he rerouted assets, created new corporate veils, and restructured ownership lines. His phone buzzed, a meeting request, from Art Lindsay. The decision had already been made. Gavin needed someone reliable, someone whose loyalty was absolute. Art checked all the boxes. Their meeting took place in Art's modest office, functional and unremarkable, a stark contrast to the high-profile cases the agency typically handled. Gavin didn't waste time. "I want a full dossier on Sabrina Hollis and Derek Carrington, financials, associates, skeletons, everything." Art didn't flinch. "I figured you'd show up sooner or later. I've already started pulling files." Gavin raised an eyebrow. "You were expecting this?" "I saw the red flags," Art replied evenly. "The way she isolated you from your circle, her sudden interest in your company, and her brother's habits." Gavin leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What habits?" From a drawer, Art produced a manila folder and slid it across the desk. "Toby Hollis, her brother, is drowning in debt. He owes some very serious people a lot of money. It all started before she ever met you." Gavin flipped through the contents. With each page, the puzzle pieces locked into place. She hadn't fallen for him. She'd selected him. He was a solution, not a soulmate. Art hesitated briefly before continuing. "There's something else. Carrington isn't just some affair. He's connected to a slew of financial cons. Nothing on record, but his name's a common thread in high-end fraud." Gavin's tone dropped to a near whisper. Cold, lethal. "I don't want to just stop them. I want to annihilate them." Art nodded once. "Then I'll need time. They're careful. They cover their digital and legal footprints. They won't expect anything, not until the vows are said." Gavin's voice was smooth, unnervingly calm. "That gives us just enough of a window." Over the following days, Gavin wore his role like a tailored suit. He attended meetings, oversaw final wedding preparations, smiled where protocol demanded. But inside, something vital had shifted. He documented every interaction with Sabrina, saved her voicemails, recorded their conversations. Her affectionate tone, once comforting, became damning. Each gentle caress felt like a lie rebranded as love. At the rehearsal dinner, he watched her flit from guest to guest, turning charm into currency, laughing at his father's jokes, playing the picture-perfect bride-to-be. But he saw it now, how her eyes scanned the exits, lingered on valuables. She wasn't soaking in the moment. She was surveying the layout. His father, Lawrence, pulled him aside. "You're distracted," Lawrence said, his voice low. "What makes you say that?" Gavin asked, careful to maintain composure. Lawrence met his gaze. "Because I've seen that look before. That's the face of a man thinking 10 steps ahead." Gavin stared at the man who'd taught him resilience and calculation. "What would you do," he asked slowly, "if someone tried to destroy everything you worked for, everything we stand for?" Lawrence's expression hardened. "I'd make damn sure they never got the chance again." Gavin nodded, the weight of resolve settling in. "Then I need your help. But you need to know the full story first." They spoke in low tones, a father and son exchanging the truth between them, while across the room Sabrina's gaze tracked their interaction. She leaned in close to Toby, who was already deep into his third drink. "Keep your eyes on them," she murmured. "Something's off with Gavin." Toby scoffed, slurring slightly. "You're imagining things. He's wrapped around your finger." "That's the problem," she whispered. "Men who put you on a pedestal. They notice when you start to wobble." As the evening wound down, guests departed with hugs, laughter, and hopeful wishes for the coming wedding. Gavin kissed Sabrina goodnight, the act mechanical, the taste of betrayal sharp on his tongue. Later, he returned to his study, opened Art's latest file, and dove deeper into the unraveling. The truth was worse than he'd feared. Sabrina's financial situation was dire, only masked by her grace and charm. Derek Carrington's network of cons spanned multiple states. It wasn't a simple hustle. It was a long, layered scheme. But now Gavin held the full blueprint. and he would dismantle it one layer at a time. He opened his safe and tucked the newest documents inside, alongside a growing arsenal of evidence. The wedding would proceed, but the ending would be his. At the window, drink in hand, he stared at his reflection, a ghost of the man he used to be. 3 years ago, he'd been generous, unsuspecting, open-hearted. That man had been buried under betrayal. What remained was leaner, sharper, unforgiving. They had mistaken wealth for weakness, love for blindness. They would regret the miscalculation. The same discipline that built his fortune would be the weapon that burned their con to the ground. 2 days until the ceremony, and they were about to learn the price of crossing Gavin Fletcher. At the St. Regis, the ballroom buzzed with energy, filled with murmured anticipation and the fragrance of fresh florals. In the groom's suite, Gavin adjusted his bow tie with methodical calm. Lawrence, standing beside him, fixed the cuffs of his tuxedo. "You still have time to walk away," Lawrence murmured. "We can end this here." But Gavin didn't move. Not yet. They needed to believe they were untouchable, wrapped in the illusion of safety. The higher they soared in arrogance, the more devastating their fall would be, and it would happen in front of everyone. The door creaked open quietly as Art Lindsay slipped into the room. "We're set. Detective Simpson and her team are in place, blending in with the guests," he said. "And Derek?" Gavin asked without turning. Art gestured toward the back of the venue. "Posted near the rear, just like we planned." Gavin checked his watch. "Sound?" "Tested twice. Crystal clear." Art hesitated, tension creeping into his voice. "She's going to deny everything, you know." "She can try," Gavin replied, his voice steady but laced with cold certainty. "I've got enough evidence to make sure neither of them walks away from this." Elsewhere in the hotel, Sabrina Hollis adjusted her stance in front of a mirror, while her mother, Madeline, fussed with the position of her veil. The gown she wore, custom-made and jaw-droppingly expensive, was the kind of luxury she insisted on. Nothing less would do. "In just a few short hours, you'll be Mrs. Gavin Fletcher," Madeline said, her eyes gleaming. "Think of the fortune, the doors it'll open." Sabrina smirked as she applied her lipstick with surgical precision. "Keep talking like that and someone might overhear." Then, switching to a rehearsed sweetness, she smiled at her reflection. "Where's Derek?" "He's where he needs to be." "Toby's watching his back," Madeline whispered. She leaned in, voice dropping lower. "We're still on schedule?" "Perfectly," Sabrina answered, her gaze hardening. "Gavin's so deeply in love, it's almost sad. He won't see any of it coming. In no time, he'll hand over everything. Then—" She drew an invisible line across her neck and chuckled softly. Music swelled from the orchestra, the wedding march. Guests rose to their feet. The grand doors opened slowly. Sabrina glided down the aisle, a flawless vision of elegance. Her smile never wavered as she reached Gavin, who looked back at her with open affection and trust. The officiant began, his voice echoing in the lavishly adorned ballroom. Then came the key moment. "Do you, Gavin Fletcher, take Sabrina Hollis to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Gavin didn't blink. He met her eyes squarely. "Actually," he said, voice resonant and firm, "before we move forward, I have something I'd like to share with our guests." Sabrina's brow furrowed slightly, until Gavin produced a small remote from his pocket. A soft electronic buzz filled the air. Then, from the speakers, her voice rang out. "Relax, baby. All we need is his money. Once the vows are done, we'll be rid of him." Color drained from Sabrina's face as the recording continued. Clip after clip played, her conversations with Derek, their cruel mockery of Gavin, and their whispered schemes. Betrayal, manipulation, even talks of eliminating him. "I've been compiling this for weeks," Gavin said evenly, though fury burned behind his eyes. "Would you prefer the part where they detail how to drain my accounts, or maybe the discussion about which poison leaves the fewest traces? Madeline wobbled, barely staying on her feet as the ballroom collectively recoiled in disbelief. Derek stood abruptly, trying to slide out, but two large men blocked his path. Art's security team, ready and waiting. Turning back to the guests, Gavin raised his voice. Sabrina Hollis and Derek Carrington have a pattern. They've conned the rich before, but this time they made a fatal mistake. He stepped closer. Sabrina instinctively took a step back. They targeted someone who believes loyalty is everything. Detective Susan Simpson emerged from the crowd, flashing her badge. Sabrina Hollis, Derek Carrington, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and several other charges we'll explain in detail shortly. Gasps rippled through the room as panic set in. Sabrina's composure shattered. He's lying! This is a trap! Suddenly, Toby Hollis lunged at Gavin. You son of a... I'll kill you! Security acted immediately, tackling him to the floor before he could get close. In the chaos, Sabrina's father appeared, grabbing her arm and yanking her toward a back hallway, a hidden exit they'd reserved for emergencies of a different sort. Seeing the opportunity, Derek broke from the guards and followed them. Gavin didn't move. His expression stayed calm as he turned to Art, who was already dialing. They're making for the east exit. Art nodded. Teams 2 and 3 are already deployed. But Sabrina had prepared for contingencies. In the alley behind the venue, a car waited. Shouts echoed behind them as the trio jumped in. Tires screeched. Derek barely managed to dive into the back seat. This wasn't supposed to happen, he panted. How did he find out? Shut up, Sabrina snapped, her polished mask gone. Panic replaced poise. Just shut up and let me think. Her father gripped the wheel tightly, weaving through narrow alleys. We'll head to the safe house. No, Sabrina barked. That'll be the first place they look. Go north. Head for the lake house. Back in the ballroom, Gavin addressed the stunned guests. My apologies for the disruption, he said smoothly. Please, stay. Enjoy the food. Don't let the evening go to waste. He exited and joined Detective Simpson and Art in a control room nearby, where monitors displayed live traffic camera feeds. They're headed north, Art announced. Right on schedule, Simpson replied. All the obvious hideouts are covered. Wherever they try to hide, we'll be waiting. Gavin gave a curt nod. They wouldn't fall into any of the obvious traps. Sabrina might be scared, but she wasn't foolish. She'd make a move no one expected, something off the grid. He picked up his phone and dialed Lawrence. Dad, get Judge Morris involved. It's time. Freeze every account they've got. Speeding down the highway, Sabrina's phone buzzed with notification after notification. As she read through them, her face went pale. All my funds. They've been locked. Even the offshore ones, Derek muttered, his voice trembling. How the hell did he crack those? They were masked under different identities. Because he's been outmaneuvering us from the start, Sabrina whispered, rage slipping into her tone. We thought we were the ones hunting. They switched vehicles twice, each one stashed by her father long before things went south. But the trap was tightening. Patrol cars were becoming more frequent, forcing them into smaller and narrower lanes. They're hurting us, her father growled. Every detour shrinks our choices. Sabrina's thoughts were in free fall. Every contingency she'd crafted, every layer of her scheme was collapsing. The man she once saw as a gullible romantic had engineered her total undoing. Back at headquarters, Gavin sat before the surveillance wall, cold determination in his eyes. How long until they run dry? He asked. Half a tank left, Art replied. 2 hours max. Perfect. Gavin slid his finger across the city grid. They'll try for the warehouse district. It's the only area with enough concealment and access to the river. He faced Detective Simpson. Are your units in position? Every exit's covered, she confirmed. They can try to run, just means we get to choose how this ends. His phone rang. Sabrina. He answered and put it on speaker. "Giving up already?" he said with chilling calm. "You arrogant bastard," she seethed. "Think you've won? You have no idea what I'm capable of." "Actually," he said, his voice steady, "I do. I know about the life insurance policy you took out on me, the hidden accounts, the men you destroyed before me. Did you really think I wouldn't dig once the mask slipped?" "I loved you," she said softly, almost pleading. "We could still—" He cut her off. "You loved the perks, the access, and now I'm reclaiming everything you tried to steal." He ended the call and turned to Art. "Send that to the DA. Add witness intimidation to her charges." Gavin leaned back, surrounded by glowing screens, each one a fragment of the chaos he had wrestled into control. Bank freezes, arrest orders, live camera feeds. "Cards are getting declined across the board," Art reported, pocketing his phone. "I've also warned the others they were circling. Looks like you weren't their first target." "But I'll be the last," Gavin said as he reviewed another document. "The DA's broadening the case. More victims are coming forward." "Simpson's crew uncovered a treasure trove once we gave them direction," Art added. Just then, Lawrence entered, holding a thick file. "SEC's on Derek now. Turns out he had his own side con going, scamming investors." "And Sabrina's mother?" Gavin asked. Lawrence chuckled. "Madeline's in meltdown, claims total ignorance. Country clubs already cut her loose. Amazing how fast the elites jump ship when the money dries up." Art's phone lit up again. "They abandoned the car. Now they're moving on foot through the industrial park." Gavin glanced at his watch. "They're running on fumes, physically and mentally. It's only a matter of time before they crack." He stood and straightened his tie. "Let's move to Simpson's base." At the operations hub, Detective Simpson greeted them with fresh intel. "We've recovered the last vehicle. Looks like they grabbed supplies and took off fast." "There's blood in the back," an officer chimed in. "Probably in fighting." "Derek," Gavin guessed. "He's catching on, realizing she played him. He's always been a survivor. He'll flip to save his own skin." Inside a crumbling office building, the group was already splintering. "This is all your fault," Derek roared, shoving Sabrina. "You told me he was just another rich mark, said he'd be easy to scam." "Back off," Toby warned, stepping between them, but Derek wasn't backing down. "You don't get it," he shouted. "Every one of my connections has ghosted me. My account's gone. He's destroyed everything." "Quiet," Sabrina's father barked. "They're likely closing in." But Derek had snapped. "Screw this. I'll confess. If I flip now, maybe they'll cut me a deal." Sabrina slapped him hard. The crack echoed through the empty space. "You spineless idiot," she hissed. "After everything we've done, you want to crawl away and beg?" "This is a disaster," Derek exclaimed, throwing his arms up in exasperation as he paced the suffocating, dust-laden room. "Crammed in this dump, ducking the cops. This isn't what I agreed to." "Then leave," Sabrina shot back, her words sharp enough to cut. "Go beg Gavin for mercy, see how that goes." The idea clanged around in Derek's head like a warning bell. Gavin's voice, icy and deliberate. "I'll strip you of everything." He could still see Gavin's face at the wedding, restrained rage behind a polite mask. Forgiveness wasn't on the table. Inside Gavin's office, Art monitored the surveillance feed. "They're holed up on the 5th floor of the Riverside complex," he relayed. "Tempers are flaring again. Looks like their alliance is fraying at the edges." "Mobilize the tactical unit," Detective Simpson ordered. "They're unraveling, mentally exhausted. It's the perfect window." "Not yet," Gavin said calmly, eyes locked on the footage. "Let them deteriorate a little more. The weaker their bond, the easier they'll shatter." Lawrence, watching his son work, felt a strange blend of pride and apprehension. "You've mapped out every move." "They were excellent teachers," Gavin said quietly. Trust isn't a gift. It's earned. And betrayal? That deserves nothing. On the screen, 4 figures, once proud, insulated by wealth, now crouched in the shadows, stripped of influence and dignity. Gavin had already eliminated their wealth, severed their connections, and tarnished their reputations. But his work wasn't finished. Release everything we have on the other victims, Gavin instructed Art. Let the public judge them for who they really are. If the courts fall short, public memory won't. Already done, Art confirmed. The expose just went live. Their names are radioactive. No one's going near them now. Gavin gave a faint nod of approval. These were the ones who tried to erase his future. Now he was dismantling theirs, not with brute strength, but with cold calculation. As darkness cloaked the city, his trap tightened. On the screens, panic festered, fingers pointed, trust dissolved, fear replaced arrogance. Retribution was near, but more than that, they'd be forced to live with the knowledge that their downfall was self-inflicted, provoked by choosing the wrong man to betray. Gavin's gaze settled on Sabrina's grainy image. "You were right about one thing," he murmured. "I'm not the man you thought I was. I'm far worse." His office had become a war room. Glowing monitors charted financial crimes, legal briefings, live surveillance feeds. At a side desk, Art Lindsay coordinated the flow of intelligence with mechanical precision. "New reports coming in," Art said, scanning his tablet. 5 more victims. Same MO. Lure the rich, seduce them, then stage accidents. Gavin absorbed the update with steady resolve. "Send it all to Simpson. I want an airtight case." Just then, Lawrence entered, placing a bulky file on Gavin's desk. "Tracked Sabrina's assets through a maze of shell companies. She used her mother's maiden name to hide them." "Forward that to the IRS," Gavin said without looking up. "Let's throw tax evasion into the mix." The phone rang. Simpson was on the line. "We've got a hit. They accessed a safety deposit box at First National. Missed them by a few minutes, but the footage is clear as day." "They're getting careless," Gavin remarked. "They're running out of cards," Simpson replied. "Toby tried using his credit card. Denied. They're bleeding cash." In a grime-coated motel on the outskirts of the city, Sabrina paced like a caged animal while Derek peeked through the blinds. Their opulent lifestyle was a distant memory. Designer outfits wrinkled, their pristine appearances fading. "He's tracking us," Derek muttered, eyes darting. "Like prey. No funds, no friends. We're boxed in." "Spare me," Sabrina snapped. "Maybe if you hadn't made our meetings so obvious." "Oh, so now it's my fault?" Derek turned on her, voice rising in fury. "You're the one who couldn't stop spending, always pushing for more, for the wedding, for the next step." Toby wedged himself between them before the argument exploded further. "Enough. Fighting won't help. We need a plan." Their father sat hunched on the bed, a ghost of the man he'd once been. "What plan?" he said hollowly. "Gavin's leveled everything. No one returns my calls. Every account's frozen. Even Madeline's friends won't text back," Sabrina added, bitter. "He's blackened our names. That charming gentleman act? It was just camouflage. Underneath, he's a shark." "No," their father whispered. "He's the monster we created. We tried to break him. Now he's simply returning the favor." Back at Gavin's operations center, Art looked up from a call. "Derek's cracking. He's contacted 3 lawyers trying to cut a deal." "Let him sit with it," Gavin replied, voice devoid of warmth. The more time they spent locked in together, the more ruthlessly they turned on each other. Lawrence studied his son's unreadable face. "You knew this would happen," he thought. "People like them always collapse under real pressure. They pretend to be invincible until someone stronger steps into the picture." Gavin's tone was flat, stripped of emotion. "I'm just showing them who actually holds the power." That's when Detective Simpson walked in, holding a new batch of evidence. "We located their last base. Total chaos inside, papers scattered everywhere." "They must have left in a hurry," she added, laying out photographs beside detailed blueprints of what was clearly a staged accident. This wasn't recklessness. It was orchestrated. Gavin examined the documents with cool precision. "Add attempted murder to the list," he said, "and make sure the DA understands this wasn't only about money." "They're running out of places to vanish," Simpson said. "The walls are closing in." Gavin gave a measured, icy smile. "Then let's seal them in." The warehouse rose like a shadow against the dark sky, broken windows gaping like dead eyes. Gavin had chosen the spot with surgical accuracy, secluded enough to prevent bystanders, yet reachable for a swift law enforcement response. Art's crew had spent weeks transforming it into a trap, concealing advanced surveillance gear behind a carefully staged layer of decay. "They fell for it," Art confirmed, eyes fixed on the monitors as headlights appeared in the distance. The anonymous tip about the safe house worked perfectly. Gavin straightened his tie. "Simpson's team in position?" Art nodded. "All exits covered. This ends tonight." Inside the SUV, Sabrina and her partners bickered, their tension rising. The polished elegance they once wore like armor had dissolved, replaced by ill-fitting clothes and worn expressions. Their former facade was in ruins. "Something's wrong," Derek murmured. "This feels too easy." "We can't afford doubts," Sabrina snapped. "We're broke, hunted, and out of time. Unless you'd prefer to march into custody?" With a shared look of resignation, they climbed out. Toby took the lead, flashlight in hand. The interior was convincingly abandoned, layers of dust blanketing rusted machinery and forgotten crates. "See?" Sabrina said, gesturing around. "This'll work. We can regroup here." "Plan our next." Her words died as powerful floodlights roared to life. Gavin appeared above them on a steel catwalk, expression unreadable but laced with cold amusement. Officers stepped from the shadows, weapons trained and ready. His voice echoed through the space. "Welcome to your conclusion. Thought you might appreciate the show." "You bastard!" Toby lunged forward but froze as laser sights danced over his chest. Gavin began his descent, slow and deliberate. "Before you're dragged away in cuffs," he said, "understand this. You didn't lose because you came after me. You lost because you misjudged what betrayal awakens in a man." "We can make a deal," Derek blurted, desperation leaking into his voice. "I've got intel, bigger players." "Shut up," Sabrina shrieked, but he was unraveling fast. "She's the architect. Seduced him, married him, planned the crash, all her." Gavin watched their alliance collapse with a grim, almost clinical satisfaction. "Detective Simpson has all she needs," he said coolly. "But go on. Keep stabbing each other in the back. It suits you," Sabrina finally snapped. "You think this makes you noble? You're worse than us. We wanted money. You want destruction." "No," Gavin replied. "I want justice. Every move I made was legal. All I did was let your own greed be your undoing." Detective Simpson stepped forward. "Sabrina Hollis, Derek Carrington. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and laundering illicit funds." As she recited each charge, Gavin studied their faces. The people who once plotted his death now looked like what they were, criminals in chains. Sabrina resisted, spitting curses and venom. Derek went quietly, already scheming for a deal. Toby and his father surrendered without resistance. The defiance had drained from them. Gavin looked at Sabrina as she was led past him. "Feels good, doesn't it?" he asked. "Watching your perfect plan burn down?" She spat a hateful reply, but Gavin caught it, that flicker of fear in her eyes. For the first time, she understood what she'd truly unleashed. This wasn't revenge. It was methodical, calculated ruin. Months later, the courtroom was hushed as the judge prepared to deliver sentencing. The sting at the warehouse had been just the beginning. Each day since had revealed deeper layers of corruption and betrayal. Gavin sat in the gallery beside Lawrence and Art, face composed as justice unfolded before them. Sabrina's sharp glamour had faded, replaced by a prison uniform's brutal simplicity. Derek's easy charm had been stripped away by a mountain of irrefutable evidence, and justice, at last, was being served. The court finds no trace of remorse in the defendants, the judge declared with solemn authority. Their deliberate deceit, culminating in a murderous conspiracy, warrants the severest punishment. Sabrina Hollis, sentenced to 25 years. Derek Carrington, given 20. Back at the district attorney's office, Detective Simpson delivered a summary with surgical clarity. Additional victims are stepping forward, and we're moving to indict them in 3 more states, he said. Their days of manipulating anyone are over. What about Madeline? Art asked. Gavin's tone was flat. Public humiliation will be her undoing. For someone like her, being cast out is a harsher sentence than prison. That night, in the quiet of Gavin's office, Lawrence poured 2 drinks. To a reckoning well delivered, Gavin said, raising his glass, though he didn't drink. But justice isn't the end. I've implemented a top-to-bottom screening process at the firm. No one gets close enough to compromise me again. Lawrence watched him carefully. You're different now. I had to be, Gavin replied, stepping toward the window that overlooked the skyline, his skyline. They showed me the world for what it truly is. And now I know how to survive in it. Art entered, joining them with a quiet nod. Any second thoughts? Only that I didn't see it sooner, Gavin replied. His reflection in the glass showed a version of himself that was colder, more resolute. A man no longer susceptible to Sabrina's charm. The shift in him, he realized, had been essential. By morning, Gavin was immersed in reviewing blueprints for a new high-profile project. Far from destroying his company, the scandal had fortified it. His firm's reputation had grown stronger, a direct result of how decisively he handled the betrayal. Then a phone buzzed. A news alert. Sabrina had filed an appeal. Gavin glanced at the image, her in court, features still striking but hollowed by defeat. He didn't bother reading further. That part of his life was closed. It was a brutal lesson about loyalty and the price of misplaced trust. Late that evening, Lawrence found Gavin still working. The Gavin I knew would have called it a night hours ago, his father observed. That version of me vanished the day I read those texts. And the man in front of me now? He's tougher, wiser, and ready for whatever comes. They stood side by side, father and son, taking in the vast city lights. Gavin had shaped the skyline with talent and willpower. Now he had proven he could protect what he'd built just as fiercely. Your mother would have been proud, Lawrence said, voice low. Not of the revenge necessarily, but of the strength you showed. Gavin gave a quiet nod, remembering the principles she'd instilled in him. Truth, honor, justice. He had honored those values not by turning the other cheek, but by holding those who betrayed him accountable. In the following days, the last headlines rolled out. Sabrina and Derek were transferred to separate correctional facilities. Toby and his father struck plea deals to avoid trial. Madeline, now disgraced, liquidated her estate and retreated into obscurity. The same media outlets that once celebrated Gavin and Sabrina's engagement now documented the fallout in excruciating detail. In his office, Gavin methodically sorted through the final pieces of evidence: audio recordings, photographs, incriminating documents. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder of what he was capable of when pushed. A new invitation arrived, another society fundraiser. Gavin opened it with a faint smile, recalling how such an event had once brought Sabrina into his life. He would attend, but this time, eyes wide open. His kindness would never again be mistaken for gullibility. The city stretched out before him, full of promise, riddled with risk. But Gavin Fletcher was prepared. He was no longer just an acclaimed architect. He was a man who had proven that betrayal had a price. He had erected his empire from vision and grit, and shown he could dismantle threats with the same precision. The message whispered through high society circles was clear. Gavin Fletcher was not to be crossed. Epilogue. 5 years later. The new headquarters of Fletcher Architecture Group rose 40 stories high, a gleaming marvel of glass and steel that embodied power and ambition. Inside the penthouse suite, Gavin, now 39, stood at the helm of a global empire. What had happened 5 years ago hadn't broken him. It had propelled him. "The Shanghai contract is confirmed," his executive assistant said. "They've requested your presence for final oversight." "Schedule it for next month," Gavin replied, eyes on the blueprints. "And have security run background checks on every person involved." She nodded. Security protocols were second nature to his staff now. Ever since Sabrina's betrayal, Gavin had imposed rigorous checks on every personal and professional interaction. Trust was no longer assumed. It was earned. Art Lindsay stepped into the office, their friendship now forged in steel. His elite security firm, born from uncovering Sabrina's deception, had become the industry gold standard. "Confirmed," Art said. "Sabrina's final appeal was thrown out. She's serving the full term." Gavin didn't look up. "And Derek?" "Still cooperating with the feds. Might shave off some time. But his name's poison. No one will touch him." The names that had once kept Gavin awake at night no longer held weight. Sabrina Hollis had become a cautionary tale, a beautiful schemer who flew too close to the sun. Gavin Fletcher had survived the betrayal and mastered every lesson it taught. Sabrina had launched her plan with the intent to destroy Gavin, but the wreckage she created ended up consuming her instead. "Madeline's skipping town," Art noted, speaking of Sabrina's mother. "Once the country club revoked her membership, she lost whatever shred of status she had left. She was heading to Florida now, hoping for a fresh start among strangers." "She won't escape it," Gavin replied, his voice steady. "I made sure her past has a permanent shadow. No decent community would embrace someone entangled in plotting a murder." That same day, Lawrence Corbin made an unannounced visit. Though he'd stepped back from full-time work, the seasoned patriarch remained mentally razor-sharp. At 65, he watched his son with quiet pride. Once a betrayed man, now fully in control. "The new foundation wing opens next week," he said, nodding toward the upcoming dedication. "Your mother would have been proud to see her name on a pediatric hospital." Gavin's charitable initiatives had expanded alongside his architectural empire. But now, every philanthropic move was made with rigor. No donation unchecked, no partnership unvetted. He'd learned the hard way that even good intentions could be exploited by those with darker motives. "Detective Simpson called earlier," Lawrence added. "She's been appointed the next police chief." Susan Simpson credited Gavin's ordeal as the inflection point in her career. Concrete evidence that even society's elite could be entrapped in layered deception. After the Hollis scandal, she carved out a reputation as a premier white-collar investigator. Her meticulous handling of that case propelled her into the national spotlight. These days, she collaborated closely with Gavin's security firm, helping train others to recognize sophisticated manipulation before it struck. Back behind prison bars, Sabrina's carefully polished facade had eroded. The charm she once weaponized now faded under institutional lights and repetitive routines. The other inmates knew her by reputation. The femme fatale, whose scheme imploded. Her visitors dwindled to none. Even her brother Toby had cut ties completely after serving his shorter sentence. Their father, once obsessed with status, now lived alone in a small rental, emotionally broken and financially reduced. The family's prior prestige lived only in outdated headlines, now part of a cautionary tale lost to time. Derek Carrington, who turned state's witness to secure leniency, paid the price. Branded a traitor, he became an outcast, even among criminals. Prison had stripped away his swagger, revealing a man more fearful than persuasive. Paranoia became his constant companion. He knew too well that his cooperation had made him a marked man. Gavin's private world had also transformed. Though he occasionally dated, he approached each relationship with intense scrutiny. Every potential partner underwent extensive background vetting. Claire Mitchell, a prominent surgeon, passed every test and understood the reasons behind them. Their relationship developed with intention, built on confirmed trust instead of fleeting passion. One evening, as they shared drinks, Art remarked, "You've turned into the man they never thought they were messing with. One who can't be fooled, who spots the trap before it's sprung." Gavin answered evenly, "I became who I had to be. This world doesn't spare the naive. I refuse to be prey." That mindset shaped his firm's evolution. The Fletcher Group now focused on designing fortified environments, banks, government centers, high-stakes corporate headquarters. His experience with betrayal became the framework for anticipating and blocking it. The same gossip columns that once gushed over his engagement to Sabrina now chronicled his ascent as a dominant figure in global enterprise. Reporters called him exacting and relentless. In a world ruled by power, terms like ruthless and methodical were considered compliments. Lawrence, though proud, sometimes looked on with concern. Gavin had emerged victorious, every loose end tied, every betrayal avenged. But where once stood a warm, trusting son, now stood someone colder, more calculating. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if you'd just turned them over to the authorities?" Lawrence once asked. "Let the system handle it?" Gavin didn't hesitate. No, they needed to feel it. Not just the legal repercussions, but the psychological devastation of being dismantled by the very man they underestimated. That lesson extended beyond Sabrina and her partners in crime. Gavin's story had become a whispered lesson among the elite. Not all victims stay broken. Some rise and retaliate. Claire understood that transformation deeply. As a trauma surgeon, she had seen how crisis could either fracture a person or forge something new. To her, Gavin hadn't chosen violence. He'd chosen precision. His evolution reminded her of those she treated. Survivors rebuilt with care, not chaos. "You used their own tools," she said one night at his penthouse dinner table. "They tried to ruin you with influence and image. You dismantled them with the same weapons." Gavin nodded. "I studied them, found their weaknesses, the places they thought no one would strike, and I broke them down, one exact move after another." His home reflected that same transformation. Gone were the curated aesthetics Sabrina once insisted on. In their place stood a sleek, minimal stronghold, commanding, impenetrable. It was equipped with the latest in both digital and physical security. Art's investigative firm now operated from several levels within Gavin's tower. Their partnership had grown into something formidable, combining Gavin's reach with Art's instincts to shield others from threats just as complex. "We've dismantled at least a dozen scams like this already this year," Art remarked. "It's wild how many women like Sabrina are out there targeting wealthy men with the same playbook." "Not exactly shocking," Gavin replied coolly. "Greed doesn't go out of style. The real variable is whether the mark gets taken or takes control." The celebration for Detective Simpson's promotion drew the city's elite. Gavin made a point to attend. His presence alone was a reminder of how deftly he had handled his brush with manipulation. His reputation now served as a cautionary tale. No one wanted to end up as obliterated as Sabrina Hollis. "Your case changed everything," Simpson said during the cocktail hour. "It made people realize these crimes aren't just about money. They shatter lives." "They certainly do," Gavin said, his thoughts flickering to Sabrina's family. Madeline had tried to start over in Florida, but her reinvention collapsed quickly. Gavin had made sure no reputable community would accept her. Toby, released after a 3-year stint, worked retail under an assumed name. Prison had sapped his fire. The defiance was gone, replaced with hollow acceptance. His biggest mistake had been putting family loyalty above self-preservation. Their father now lived like a ghost, tucked away in a small apartment. Once proud, now clinging to coupons and avoiding recognition. His social ties? Gone. His name? Disgraced. Gavin hadn't just gone after the main offenders. He had dismantled everyone who supported their deceit. Claire stood by his side at fundraisers and black-tie events, perfectly polished, aware that optics mattered. But she also understood what lay beneath the surface. The world had seen the headlines about Sabrina's trial. Claire had lived the aftermath. "You never mention her," Claire said one night, her voice soft. "There's no reason to," Gavin answered. "She was a threat. I neutralized it, completely." That completeness became evident when Sabrina's first parole review arrived. Gavin had quietly sent the board a meticulous dossier, every con, every manipulation, even the attempted murder plan. Her parole was denied. She'd serve every day of her sentence. Derek, despite testifying against her, faced a different kind of punishment. His sentence was shortened by cooperation, but his name was tarnished. He lived under constant scrutiny. Former allies now waited for the right moment to settle scores. Derek's days were ruled by dread, knowing that Gavin's leniency had stripped him of any shield. Meanwhile, Fletcher architecture thrived. Gavin's latest designs emphasized strength and alertness, buildings that mirrored the man he'd become, tall, bold structures in steel and glass, commanding yet refined. "You've made fear your business," Lawrence observed over dinner one evening. "I built it by reading people," Gavin replied. "Power gets you respect. Ruthlessness ensures you keep it. Show too much compassion, and they'll take it for weakness. I won't make that mistake twice." That mindset defined every facet of his life. Employees were vetted down to the smallest detail. Business partners were assessed thoroughly. Even charitable giving came with terms, contracts, and oversight. The man who once fell victim to betrayal had reshaped himself into someone invulnerable. Every move was calculated. Every threat was met with swift, precise action. Sabrina's collapse had become folklore in elite circles, spoken of in whispers at high-end galas and behind closed doors in corporate boardrooms. She aimed to rob a man of his fortune, and instead ignited a transformation that destroyed her. Her legacy had become a warning to any aspiring con artist. Gavin's office overlooked the skyline he had helped sculpt. The buildings bore his signature, not just in design but in philosophy. Each one a monument to control and resilience. He no longer resembled the man who'd once been deceived. The victim was gone. In his place stood someone far more dangerous, a man who didn't need violence to ruin lives. He had learned to weaponize influence, status, and psychological insight. "Was it worth it?" Claire once asked him. "Becoming this version of yourself?" Gavin studied the city stretched out beneath him, a kingdom he'd forged through calculated precision and raw will. "They thought they could break me," he said quietly. "What they did was create someone stronger. Someone who knows that trust isn't a gift. It's something you verify, guard, and never stop watching. Someone who never lets a betrayal go unpunished." The city lights shimmered in the glass, casting his reflection back at him. The hopeful architect who once fell for a clever manipulator was a distant memory. In his place stood a man whose mere presence could send chills through those with bad intentions. He had traded his innocence for something greater. Gavin Fletcher hadn't just survived betrayal, he had used it to build a legacy rooted in one unwavering principle. In a world driven by lies, trust was a weapon, mercy was weakness, and vengeance, precise, measured, and merciless, was the purest form of control. Our story comes to an end here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed this story, please check out other videos on this channel. See you soon, my dear friend.